Hello, this is the last lecture for Chapter 3 on supply and demand. As you can see, I ran out of ink from my printer, so I had to draw it up by hand. Hopefully ink will come in the next day or so through Amazon. This looks at what happens to equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity if supply and demand both change at the same time. And there's 4 different possibilities, but I want to show you from your book why it's kind of complicated. So this is an older edition of the book. It may not be the same page as in your current textbook. This is this is 3rd edition. So here we have a picture of supply and demand changing at the same time. In this case, they're both moving out to the right. Your author has S0, S1, excuse me, D0, D1. Both go out to the right. And so in this case, when we go out to the right, you can see that the price didn't change. They increased supply and demand by the same magnitude. They kept the price the same level. The equilibrium quantity had gone up, but the price is the same. But up here, you can see that they could have changed how they increase supply and demand. In this case, supply increases just a little bit compared to down here, and so we ended up with a higher price. Here is what they did in the graph here. They kept the price the same. But down here, they increased supply a lot more, and you can see the price went down. So it gets complicated when both supply and demand change at the same time. And if you put it on one graph, it's kind of excuse me, boy, it's kind of hard to see what's happening. So what I suggest is to separate the two effects. And so, for example, let's say we have supply and demand both increasing. So let me draw supply and demand. S1, D1. And let me show the demand changes always in the first graph, and we'll show the supply changes in the second graph. So here we have price quantity. I'll just call it price 1 and quantity 1. And so that represents equilibrium price quantity. Price 1, quantity 1. And so demand increases, that's going to shift out to the right. Just go to the bottom line. We want to know what happens to the price quantity. And so the graph says price goes up and the quantity goes up. Higher supply is also out to the right. Remember, it's not falling, it's moving out to the right. Just go to the new equilibrium position. Price P2, quantity Q2. So here the price is going down, here the quantity is going out. And so look at the two prices and do they agree? Do they agree? No, they don't. They disagree. Higher demand says price going up, higher supply says price going down. That's why when you looked at the textbook, we did not know what's going to happen to the price. Unless we know the exact magnitude of changes. But in reality, we almost never know that. We know that supply increased, not quite sure how much. We know demand increased, not quite sure how much. Therefore, to make our prediction about price, we really don't know because they disagree. They do agree on the quantity, so there's no doubt equilibrium quantity is going to go up. So if both supply and demand increase, we know definitely the quantity is going to increase. Equilibrium quantity is going to increase. But equilibrium price change, we don't know. Your book calls it indeterminate. I'll just put a question mark there, meaning we don't know. That means indeterminate. We cannot determine. We can determine the equilibrium quantity is going to go up, but not about the equilibrium price. Now, on the exam, we could have a higher demand, lower supply. Higher demand shifts out to the right, just like before. Higher price, higher quantity. Decreased supply, shift to the left. Higher price, lower quantity. So they both agree price is going up. So we know if demand increases and supply decreases, the price is going to go up. They disagree on the quantity. So in this case, the change in the equilibrium quantity is indeterminate. We don't know. I'll give it a question mark. We can have lower demand, lower supply. Lower demand means it shifts inward to the left. And new equilibrium point right there. Lower price, lower quantity. Decreased supply. Higher price, lower quantity. So much easier if you separate it on two different graphs. Don't put it on the same graph. You can't see what's going on. And just look and see where they agree. They both say decreased quantity. That's guaranteed. Equilibrium quantity is going to go down. Price, they disagree. Don't know. Give equilibrium price change a question mark. And that's going to be the case if both supply and demand change at the same way, or sorry, the same time, no matter which way they change. One change in either equilibrium price or quantity will be known. The other one will be indeterminate. Which one? It depends on what's happening. The last possibility is lower demand, higher supply. So decreased demand means it shifts inward to the left. Price comes down. Quantity comes down. Higher supply shifts out to the right. Price comes down, quantity increases. Where do they agree? Both say price comes down. Disagree. Lower demand says quantity moves inward. Higher supply says quantity moves outward. They disagree. The change in equilibrium quantity is indeterminate. Give it a question mark. Push it up there, get away from the closed caption. Okay. Kind of messy, but gets the job done. And that is it for chapter 3. The next step is chapter 4, and I'll see you later on.